around America, there are hundreds of paranormal teams. In central Pennsylvania, there's one team known for their abilities and results, Mo Valley Paranormal. Join us now for a look into the world of hauntings and how the experts investigate the occurrences. This is Mo Valley Paranormal Live with Dave Shannon and Tyson Lidgett.
And hello again, everybody. Welcome to our regular weekly get-together and discussion of the paranormal and the investigation of it. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight.
And for those of you who don't know, Tyson, of course, is the founder and lead investigator of Mo Valley Paranormal, our top-notch team here in central Pennsylvania, a team that people turn to and they don't want to fear the unknown, and so they turn to Mo Valley Paranormal. And that fits right in because the mission statement is taking fear away from the unknown, as I recall.
To taking the fear away from the unknown.
Yeah. So there you go. At any rate, speaking of taking fear away from the unknown, you could have some fear removed if there are places remaining in the upcoming lockdown here at the beginning of June at 1806 Antiques in Jennerstown. Tyson, what's the latest on the upcoming lockdown?
There are spots available. We have a handful left open on Friday night, June 9th, and about half the spots open on Saturday, June 10th. So there are still opportunities to jump on board of this lockdown event. It is at the 1806 Uniques and Antiques in Jennerstown. We did an investigation back in November, got some really interesting evidence, and we're just looking forward to getting in there with the public and hopefully gleaning some new evidence out of that place.
Yeah, and the way to get in touch with you to reserve their spot in the upcoming lockdown is?
Absolutely. You can message us on our Facebook page, Facebook.com/Mo Valley Paranormal. You can call me directly, 814-441-1898, and you'll be talking to me. And thirdly, you can email us, movalleyparanormal@yahoo.com. Very easy. Once I receive your request for your spot or multiple spots, I will send you my PayPal link. You pay the price for the single spot or the multiple spots. I send you confirmation. You're on the guest list, and we'll see whatever night you chose to join the investigation. We're looking forward to it. I know me. I'm looking forward to getting back down there and investigating again. Just a great historical site for their area.
Now, for the team, are you guys planning on camping out somewhere near Jennerstown overnight? That's a hoof for you guys to go down 2 nights in a row down to 1806 Antiques, or is that still what you guys will do?
Well, thank God for tax deductions, because if I have to buy gas, for the 2.5 hour trip back and down, a night or two, that just, will be written off. But no, we'll be making the hoof to and from. So,
okay.
Yeah, so just what you got to do, I guess.
That makes for some tired team members. But you're going to have to get the official Mo Valley Paranormal RV. You have to get yours. And I know that black is, a favorite color for Mo Valley Paranormal. Do not get a black RV.
That would be impossible to keep clean. So,
not to mention the fact that in the dead of summer, if you're using it, you're probably going to break the air conditioner within about a week.
Right.
So, at any rate, no, this is a great place. If you've not heard us talk about it to this point, once again, another great historic place near Route 30. And as we talked about, that tends to be Pennsylvania's answer to Route 66 out west. And that's our Route 66. And there's just a lot of history along that road. You head east, and eventually you get into Civil War territory.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, you head further east, and you continue to get closer to the birthplace of the nation in the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia. So it's the kind of area that spawns this. And of course, the 1806 Antiques, if you've not heard us talk about it, was basically built as a stop, a kind of a stagecoach stop kind of thing, and was used by General Washington and eventually President Washington as wars were fought, and it was a strategic place for them to stop for a while. So, and that's now that there's no, by the way, we're not guaranteeing that there's going to be a disembodied voice of George Washington show up.
No.
So don't count on that happening. But not unlike your investigation at the John Bonet,
right,
where you were corrected about President Washington, General Washington.
Yes.
This would be, same kind of thing, except, as I say, I don't expect that George Washington will show. George Washington did not turn into a spirit and stay there.
No.
So
No.
if he did that at all, he's probably back at his old home.
Mount Vernon, yeah. I mean, it's just a great equation for possible paranormal activity. You have all the history, all the historical, happenings that would lend to residuals, and then you have over 15 deaths associated within the property that would lead to hopefully some intelligence. So it's just a wonderful equation for possible, paranormal activity. And I think we just really scratched the surface our first investigation, which is so many times the case, where the first time you go in and you just get little nuggets of, evidence. And then as you go back, you gain this quote unquote rapport with whatever is there, that, you're not there to provoke or to harass. You're just there to communicate and give them a chance to talk. And it seems that so many times you get more evidence as you return. A good example has been our returns to the old Clearfield County Jail, the Reed Funeral Home, the Roland Theater. These places, the more you go back, the more things are willing to interact and communicate with you. And we're hoping that's the case with the 1806 Uniques and Antiques, because Laurel Foy and her sister, who own the building, have given us exclusive access to it that we can use. And we're just hoping that this turns out to be a great lockdown site, because it's such a historical location.
Yeah. Now, not that we don't have enough historical spots around our area as well. I mean, we still, it's amazing. I've been impressed with the way that Bellefonte has taken care to try to preserve the historic nature of that town. And it's kind of tough to do, especially when you're in an area where things are changing all the time because of the increasing popularity and attendance at Penn State University. And there tends to be a reaction toward that. But Bellefonte's resisted temptation and managed to continue to look like the Bellefonte of old. If you would happen to be a spirit hanging out, and you were originally in Bellefonte, I don't think you'd feel much different today, not a whole lot different, than what you did back in the days that you may have lived. So that's always a key. Speaking of what you pick up when you go to these places and the amount of residual activity, and we'll be talking about the only show that I have in new runs, which is Dead Files. We'll be talking about that coming up. But I was very impressed to hear Amy Allen as she was doing her walkthrough, and she encountered someone on the way who was walking down the hall, and she watched that for a while and then said, "Oh, that's just residual."
That's just residual, yep.
Yeah, and it was like, holy cow. I mean, this was one of the first times that I have seen a psychic medium or heard a psychic medium speak in terms that are much more familiar to just paranormal investigators than what it would be to a psychic medium. That they, that's just a term that does not come up in the psychic mediums repertoire as they talk about, as they do their thing, let's say.
Yeah.
But was interesting to hear that. So, I guess there's confirmation of that. This has been something that's been around for a while. And, one of the things that will happen at a property, and especially one like 1806 Uniques and Antiques, is because it was exactly what Tyson said, the age of the place, that there is going to be that kind of activity around.
Mm-hmm.
There have been so many people there over the course of time, and the building at 211 years old, obviously there's been a lot of people involved around that building
Right.
over the course of time.
Right.
So there's every bit of a chance that there will be an imprint, that little bit of recorded history, that plays back for you on occasion.
We were just contacted by a client. Well, they're now a client, but we were just contacted here the other day that we will be doing their investigation sometime in August, and pretty much any family member that has lived in this house has passed in this house, and one of their main activities that they experience is heavy boot steps up and down the main stairwell of the house, which is predominantly, in most cases, a residual activity.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, it's 1806 Uniques and Antiques has the potential for that, but also depending on the nature of the death, or maybe just if the spirit was particularly tied to that property in some way, shape, or form, probably a favorite place of theirs. And one of the things that we've been talking about in the lead up to this is the fact that because of some renovations that were being done and the exposure of an old hearth area inside the building, when some old wall coverings and plasterboard or plaster was torn down, and they discovered the old hearth, and that seemed to kick up the activity.
oh yeah,
So that will happen at these historic places because for whatever reason, as I said when we were talking about that before, it's kind of like peeling back the layers of the onion, and you take one of those layers and peel it back, and it's going to allow some spirits an opportunity to interact with the living. We're going to take a brief commercial timeout. We will be back with more. It is Mo Valley Paranormal Live on News Talk 970 WBLF. News Talk 970 WBLF. A good Saturday evening to one and all. You're listening to Mo Valley Paranormal Live. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
hello everybody. Glad to have you along.
We get together and we discuss the paranormal and the investigation thereof each and every Saturday night. Tyson, of course, brings all the knowledge and experience of the years that he's been with. He created Mo Valley Paranormal. He's the lead investigator, and so he's been through quite a bit. He's been to some of the famous places that you may know of from watching TV, and he has some places that he's kind of made famous by. Or at least for me, being on the show.
Hopefully not infamous,
No, I know of no infamy related to anything between this show and Hometown Haunts. There were, this exposed area folks to a number of locations around us that are maybe perhaps more prone to paranormal activity than some of those big ones that you pay a lot of money to go investigate. And but one of the things, and one of the reasons that we keep the show going is we hope we're imparting some wisdom to people that maybe have watched the paranormal investigating shows on TV, Paranormal Reality, and if you can sometimes cut through the chaff to get to the wheat, so to speak. Maybe you found that interesting and you think you'd like to try to do that yourself. And we've talked about equipment and, the things you need to do, the things you need to take into consideration before you go out to investigate, and we hope we're instilling good ideas in everybody, because we'll talk about this before we talk about the show itself. And first of all, Tyson, I guess let's bring up the Dead Files. We always have like a pre-show discussion before we actually begin the program. And Tyson has an interesting story that, just very disappointing to hear, but it's, I think, related to the way some of the paranormal reality TV is presented. And it was interesting to watch the Dead Files, and a family that was being really pestered by a couple of spirits found out that they had a spirit that was trapped in their house. And the reason it was trapped in their house was because a paranormal team came in to investigate. And the story goes, which, by the way, Steve DeShabi was really, he was really concerned that someone was, embellishing what had happened at the house as far as paranormal activity goes in order to get onto TV or whatever, Steve may have thought their underlying reasons were for contacting them. And I mean, he was pretty hard on them.
Right. It's not very often you see him get worked up, but he was very to the point and very blunt with the father and saying, if you're BSing me here, we're out,
Yep.
we're gone. So,
he was pretty adamant about that, and rightfully so. We saw them being taken advantage of once before.
Mm-hmm.
As a guy bought a property, called them in, whined about what was going on, and then revealed to them during the reveal that he's planning on turning in the place into a haunted bed and breakfast. And it's like, you absolute jerk. Yeah. And anybody that went to that guy's place after that, knowing who he was or seeing the show, anybody that went to that place after seeing that, shame on you. That's just not the way this type of thing is to be done. This guy thought somehow he was going to see dramatic dollar signs flash up in front of him.
Well, Dave, let's do this. Let's do the Dead Files, okay? And we'll go over that, and then because the Ghost Brothers was relatively uneventful. I mean, they got the usual stuff, the knocks and the bangs and stuff like that. And
they're still relying on the REM pod.
A couple REM pod hits and some Ovilus hits, which I keep forgetting. What's the leader's name?
Dewan.
And he even said to their
Dalen. I'm sorry, Dalen. I'm sorry,
okay.
Dalen.
Dalen. I think Jawan is okay.
He's the tall guy.
But I mean, even it was nice to see Dalen, tell they had a guest investigator. They do sometimes bring somebody on, and they got a couple hits on the Ovilus 5, and she says, well, maybe that means this, and he's like, man, you're really reaching for that. So it was kind of nice to hear him, say, that she was trying to put some things together that maybe didn't make sense, but they were at the Poatstown.
She was using Zach Bagan's logic.
Yeah, she was using some. She was pulling some plays out of the Ghost Adventures playbook. But they were at the Poatstown Elementary School in Ohio, which is a known haunted place. But I mean, relatively uneventful, no big piece of evidence. So let's do the Dead Files now, because I guarantee you that the last two segments I can very easily use up ranting about this clown we're going to talk about. So,
okay, and the reason that even came up, we normally hold the discussion of reality TV to the end of the program. The reason it came up is because during the reveal to the Dead Files to Steve and Amy, the couple that was having the problem at their house end up telling them about the paranormal group. Now, they had brought this up to Steve earlier, and then it was and he talked about the group panicking and leaving.
Shame.
Okay, and this is one of those things where we're always talking about this, and the segment started with us going down the road, and one of the reasons we keep the show going. And that's to try to instill in people, if this is something you want to try, And we don't expect you to be, you're not probably going to be earning money off of this, but if you do go
No.
down that road, be respectful of what it is that you're doing.
Absolutely.
And one of the ways to be respectful is to not get into the panicking, running, screaming, yelling, and all of that stuff, because that's why you're there, is to experience paranormal activity. And it's just beyond me how the Ghost Adventures guys, for as many years as they've been out there doing that, they seem to have gotten worse over the course of time. And the thing about the Dead Files is this happened to look like a group that opened up a can of worms, so to speak, woke up the spirits maybe a little bit in the house, or, and ended up leaving, doing the scream and run.
Right.
And leaving the family then with a mess.
And, it seems like to me that this is from the very sound of it, excuse me, they have very little experience. It sounds like this may have been their first case because, it was explained to Steve and Amy that they were using things like, we command you to do this and we command you to do that. Number one, you can't command anything. There's no commanding anything, especially if it's a human spirit. We get into the ideas of exorcism where if it's demonic, you may have some power through the name of Christ as commanding, but for a human spirit, that's not going to do anything. That's why, we don't provoke, because, the old saying goes, you attract more bees with honey than vinegar. And if this was a human spirit you're dealing with and you're shouting commands, I command you to do this and do that, and you're following some kind of, preceded plan by a TV show you saw where they, shout and yell at spirits, it's not going to work. And then all you do is provoke and make things worse, and then you're afraid and you run out the door. Wow, shame on you. I doubt you're listening to our show, but if you're listening to our show, shame on you for doing that to a client. If you're gonna get in this field, you need to expect sometimes you're gonna maybe be startled by stuff.
All right, words of wisdom from Tyson Lidgett. We'll come back and talk more about the paranormal reality TV shows next on News Talk 970 WBLF. News Talk 970 WBLF. Welcome back to Mo Valley Paranormal Live, our regular Saturday evening get-together and discussion of the investigation of the paranormal and other paranormal activity. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, everybody.
And we'll break into a full-fledged breakdown of the two programs that are running in original runs right now, and that would be the Dead Files just started back up, and we have the Ghost Brothers that are still out there, and we'll get to Ghost Brothers second. We'll do Dead Files first, since we kind of brought that up as an example of the way to not be a paranormal investigating group.
Yeah.
Now, we had talked about what was revealed to Steve earlier in that program, and then at the end, if you're familiar with the Dead Files, or even if you're not, then you end up with Steve is a former New York City detective. He investigates it the way someone who would just, a typical detective type investigation to help these people determine what's going on in their home. Amy, on the other hand, is a psychic medium, and she is able to see and to a degree experience and or converse with spirits that may be at a property. And so they conduct their two investigations, and then they come back together at the end and meet with, this is normally, not always, but a majority of the time, this has to do with people. They tend to help people in their homes, although they do, on occasion, visit commercial places and businesses and do investigations there. And we had talked about the fact that a paranormal group had come into this house. I guess I can understand that. That's a first step to take. If things are going on in your home and you don't understand them, going back to removing taking the fear away from the unknown type of thing, you would call a paranormal investigating group. This group comes in, gets partway through their investigation. The father at this particular property ends up in the basement, being lifted off the ground and being pushed in against the wall. And it wasn't long after that the paranormal investigating group, after witnessing paranormal activity, which is what you're normally out there to find, pack their stuff up and leave. Well, the family calls them back because now what you've done is the spirits that are there, they think, okay, people want to communicate with us now.
Right.
And then they go away, and then the family's not there to do more paranormal investigating. They're trying to live their life in their house.
Right.
And the spirits get frustrated and really start to act out, I think is one way you could put it. And that's exactly what happened. So they call this paranormal group, and not only were they screaming runners, they also somehow think that they're able to, quote unquote, cleanse a property. Now, I don't delve into those things. I'll take a K2 meter or a tri-field meter or whatever and go out and investigate, take my flashlights, take just about anything, that you want, go out and investigate. And I am not at any point going to start to either. And Tyson brought up the fact, too, that these people used, this came out in the reveal at the end of the program, that they were using the words, I command you.
Right.
You don't command anything.
No.
You just happen to live in the physical world.
Exactly.
And what you're communicating with is living in the spirit world. And there's no way you can command anything at that particular point. So just the verbiage alone showed that this particular paranormal group, which their name never came up and probably should not have.
Right.
That's a good thing.
Luckily for them.
They know who they are. This, and of course the family knows who they are, and probably the producers of the show know who they are too. But they, chose not to reveal that, and that's a good thing. Just hopefully they learn a lesson and move on from this, because they created a lot of grief. One of the spirits that Amy encountered as she's doing her walkthrough as a psychic medium is basically telling her, I can't leave now. I don't know that the spirit ever really wanted to be at that house. It had nothing in particular to do with the property per se, other than I guess it was there. There's a link there that Steve was able to establish, and maybe just drop by to visit. And whatever you do in the spirit world, I'm just trying to relate it to the physical world. Maybe drop by to visit and then end up having these paranormal amateurs go in and trap him there.
Yeah.
They did the part of their house cleansing was banishing spirits, and it was like the spirit didn't get out in time, kind of thing.
They did smudging, which is taking sage around and burning sage and saying either a positive mantra or saying a prayer. And then, the way it's supposed to go is you walk around each room, I believe counterclockwise with the sage, saying these prayers, saying the positive mantra, and then you open the windows, open the doors, and let the air take out the negative energy. It does nothing as far as, quote unquote, cleansing a house of spirits. All it is to banish negative energy. And for you to say, I command you, make appearance, or I command you to communicate or whatever. Like you said, Dave, that's not going to do anything. What the hell does the spirit care if you, command them to do anything? I'm not listening to you. And all you're going to do is provoke and make them angry. So yeah, amateur at best. I don't even. It's a good thing for them they weren't mentioned, because I'm sure that would be not good for them. But yeah, they to say that they're going to cleanse the house. That's why we don't do that, because we don't believe, number one, that you can make spirits move on. They're there for a reason. Either it's residual and you're not going to get rid of it, or it's intelligent and it wants to be there or needs to be there for some reason. So yeah, just a very bad move on their part, and making things a lot worse for this family.
And of course, one of the things, the way Dead Files works out, Amy does her what they call a walkthrough, where she visits the property and walks around from room to room and talks to the camera about the things she's encountered, the spirits that she's encountering as she maneuvers through those properties. And then Steve talks to the people that live there, or in the case of a business, the people that work there, and probably the owner. And then they meet up and they try to compare notes, basically, right in front of the clients, as it turns out. They were in Kearney, Missouri. And if you're not familiar with that, that's near Kansas City. And as a matter of fact, Steve had to go to the Kansas City Library to do a lot of his research. I noticed they had featured that in a couple of the scenes that, when he was explaining his side of the investigation. Things going on at the house included a knife that cut the owner of the property and the father, who was the guy that made the call to bring in the Dead Files. Now, he was also the person that called in the paranormal group. So, but he realized that he created a problem, because from a degree of paranormal activity that they had at their house, after these paranormal people were there, it just really kicked everything up, and things started to get worse. Now, one of the things we've talked about in the program is the idea of poltergeist activity. In other words, when things do move on their own, things happen that, are not, normal. They just physically move, or things come off the wall, something flies across the room. All of these things happen specifically in what then becomes referred to as poltergeist activity. There is this seeming direct connection. The more I've watched the programs, and Tyson and I have talked about it here on the show, that if you have teenage, somewhere from, leaping or going into being a teenager, that generally is your main connection to when you end up getting this, that type of activity.
Right.
When you're, and Amy refers to them as PK sensitives, psychokinetic, sensitives. And they're the people that end up causing the poltergeist activity to occur in a property. And that's eventually what they discover there at the home. Things are doors or drawers, rather. A drawer in the kitchen was recorded on a phone, the video on the phone. A drawer in the kitchen opened up on its own.
That was a compelling video. I wish more people had that kind of evidence for that show, because that for me made that much more watchable.
And also pointed out how, Steve DeShabe is a no-nonsense kind of guy.
Right.
I mean, this just really tripped his trigger. That's when he basically, told the father who called him in there, if I find out you're if I'm calling BS on this at the end of our investigation, you're in trouble. I was like, okay, don't hurt me, Steve. But, really got the hackles up. And I think at a certain point, after he continued to emphasize that he better not be getting fooled by somebody, that it was pretty obvious that they were just sharing their experiences that they had. And one of those happened to be a piece of video that showed a drawer in the kitchen area opening up on its own.
Yeah, I couldn't. Oh, sorry. Are we about the end of the segment?
Yep. We got to go. We'll be back and continue to talk about the Dead Files after this on News Talk 970 WBLF. News Talk 970 WBLF. Welcome back to our regular Saturday night get-together and discussion of the paranormal and the investigation thereof, otherwise known as Mo Valley Paranormal Live. I'm Dave Shannon. That guy over there is Tyson Lidgett.
Hello, folks. Shout out to our producer, Garrett, for the new intro and bumpers. That's the first time I'm hearing them. Sounds very nice.
Yes, sometimes we record the program without Garrett's presence, and he's the guy that holds the ship together. Week to week, you would not hear the program if it weren't for Garrett's efforts here on WBLF.
He is the tar on the outside of the boat that keeps us watertight.
There you, yeah. So they could do a commercial about Garrett, as a matter of fact. At any rate, we get together every week and discuss the paranormal, and we end up at the end of the show talking about paranormal reality TV. And even though we have talked about this in the past, a psychic medium is not going to become a part of Mo Valley Paranormal's investigating team.
No.
At any particular point, either now or in the future. However, I do find it interesting. I enjoy the Dead Files because you have two people, and one is a psychic medium, and she does her side of the investigation when there's a problem at her property. Steve DeShavi's an old New York City detective, and he brings the common sense side of it, and they compare notes at the end, and it's kind of amazing to me. And we take them at their word, that they do their separate investigations, and they're not sharing any information. One time they did, and they freely admitted that during the program. I remember that may have happened twice, where they felt it was necessary.
Yeah, people were like in danger of the activity going on, and they said, this is bad. So,
yeah, so they decide to share information, ahead of the reveal at the end of the program. So we're talking about this house in Kearney, Missouri, and some of the activity going on. We talked about the fact that they had poltergeist activity going on, and eventually at the end, Amy reveals, and it's amazing to me, but this seems to be the connection to poltergeist activity. Although I can't say that this is totally it, but the more I see it revealed on shows of this nature, that's the connection. There is a teenage type, and male or female, it doesn't really matter. In this case, it was a young female who seemed to be making the psychokinetic things happen, the poltergeist activity. So in Steve's investigation and going back on the history of the property, after he's convinced, because he talks to the father who called him in, the mother who basically backs up, what he's been saying, and then he talks to the three. They have three daughters, and varying ages, down to the age of 8. By the way, how impressed were you with that 8-year-old girl?
Oh, yeah, very level.
Her maturity.
Very level-headed, yep.
I mean, goodness gracious, that was very impressive. But Steve talked to all three, and in his investigation of what was going on there, he did come up with a connection that there was, this was a... back in the Civil War would have been, considered on the Union side, but there was a group of, at first they referred to them as guerrilla Confederates.
Right.
That would get together, and they had a different idea of as to how things were supposed to be going. And I forget the actual name of that group. I don't know if you wrote it.
I forget that. Something Riders, I forget.
Yeah. But they were led by this guy named Bloody Bill. The connection to this property is the brother of the gentleman that owned the property was part of this gang of guerrilla Confederates and ran with Bloody Bill. And even though Steve thought that it was Bloody Bill that was going to be the guy that was wearing the hat, because Amy, when she had her sketches done, had a sketch done of a guy with a hat on. And she would refer to him as the hat guy. Incidentally. And he thought that it was that, and Amy thought it was actually more the brother of the former owner of the property. Now, the big connection there This is the spirit we had talked earlier about. If you don't know what you're doing with this cleansing stuff, you can create a problem. That's the guy that says, I'm trapped here. I want to leave, but I can't. So now I'm mad. So that was the hat guy. And there was also a young female who took her life. And I don't know, it kind of got muddy there at the end as to whether this female spirit might have been that one from the history of the house. She died in the 1920s, I think. And then the wife had a friend who committed suicide.
Right. And I think Amy alluded to the fact that might have been her because she's trying to communicate with the wife and warning her about the stuff going on. So I think that Amy was kind of alluding to the female spirit may have been actually her friend that committed suicide.
So the bottom line is they make Amy makes her suggestion, which is to call in a Reiki master. And the last time I checked, you can't go to the yellow pages and find a Reiki master. You might be able to find a listing in the yellow pages for medium, but you're not going to find Reiki master. Anyway, this is how she chooses, she tells them that's what they need to do to get the spirits that are there to calm down. And then she also, the middle daughter is the one that was caused the poltergeist activity. And she suggests giving her something to do to kind of take her mind off of that type of stuff. And at the end, they always show you, whether the family or the business follows the advice. They did. They did not say the activity ceased. They did say it decreased, though. Mm-hmm. So that was the wrap up on the first of the new season of Dead Files. Tyson took in, I'm having all kinds of trouble. I'm a Dish Network person. I have no problems for the most part with what they do. I just have no idea what they're doing with Destination America, and that's where the Ghost Brothers are again. And I can't see them now. So Tyson is my source for all things Ghost Brothers. And did you ever think you'd be popping the trunk on that?
No. No. And I mean, it was a great history. The guys were at the Poatstown Elementary School in Ohio. And nasty history of this place. Actually, it's the ground, the land itself. There was at one time a railroad that ran through that area. July 4th, early 1900s, there was a head-on collision between two railroad engines, and 20 people were horrifically killed. I mean, it just says, 20 people were mangled. And what do? Someone's good idea. They put an elementary school over top of that land. So it's a well-known haunted location, the Poatstown Elementary School. There's all kinds of reports of apparitions, disembodied voices, the small children. So, kind of a lackluster episode. It's a reoccurring theme of their, evidence. They got some REM pod hits. They got a couple hits on the Ovilus, which Dalen, like I said, was, impressive to me. He told the guest investigator they had there, a friend of theirs, that, she was kind of reaching, that he didn't see the connection, and I appreciated that. Then they did some flashlight question and answer sessions where it appeared to be victims of the railroad accident, and they pretty much said that every time they asked if they wanted them to leave, the flashlight would come on like, yeah, we'd like you to leave. And so they actually bounced from room to room because of, everyone kept telling them to leave. It was kind of comical. I enjoy watching the show now just because of the dialogue between the brothers. And it is funny. They did catch an interesting piece of a light anomaly in the one classroom called the mean teacher room, because it said that if you stir things up in that room, you'll actually hear like the call button coming on. She's calling the principal's office. There was this strange light anomaly they caught on camera. Other than that, I mean, it was a middle of the run kind of episode for them. They left it saying that the location is Ghost Brothers stamped haunted, and that was the show. I am looking forward to the next episode, their season finale, It's the House of Wheels in Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm actually looking into maybe taking the team out there this summer to do that location. So it's I'll be interested to watch that episode. But yeah, that was the Ghost Brothers for this week.
Well, one thing, and the reason that I kind of took to the show, because there at that time there were so many, and now it's really kind of sorted itself out, and some of the issues I think are because of Destination America and whatever the heck is going on with them. For example, the Kindred Spirits show, it was meant to be a Destination America property, but ended up being on the Learning Channel. Destination America, if you don't know, little inside, television kind of stuff. Destination America is part of the Discovery Network. So is TLC. There have apparently been problems negotiating whether a cable company, a satellite provider, however it is that you get your entertainment on television, makes an agreement with Discovery, and then that's how they end up carrying the channel. And these are generally multi-year agreements. And what it is, generally what happens is Discovery says, okay, you can have this channel, but we need X amount of dollars from you, I guess. And sometimes it's worth it for the channel just to be on so that they can go to the advertisers and say, we got this many people watching. So I think that may be what the problem has been with that maybe in the past Destination America was free to the providers of entertainment, and now there's a fee for it. And I think a number of the carriers dropped Destination America because it's like, no, we're not going to pay you for that. And I think that's what the problem is. I don't know for sure. So it's made it a bit difficult. I can tell you I enjoyed the show. It's refreshing because they're guys that obviously have not spent a lot of time,
right,
are not feeling that they're somehow now psychics and mediums, and everything doesn't have to be demonic. So I like the guys. You get a genuine reaction out of them as well. So that's that. Ghost Brothers and Dead Files, the ones in new runs at this time. We'll see you again next week, folks. Good night, everybody.
Have a good night, folks.